Hello, everybody. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to be learning how to use the metric system of measure. So far, we've gone over the standard system of measure, which consists of inches and fractions and feet. Today, we're going to be changing that to the metric system. Now, I think most people find the metric system a little bit easier to use, but we want to make sure we know and understand the differences. To start us off, I'd like you guys to answer these questions for me really quick. The first question, are there fractions in the metric system? The second question, how many millimeters are there in 1 centimeter? I'll give you a minute to think about that. We'll go through those answers. Okay, so are there fractions in the metric system? No, we don't use fractions in the metric system. We use a decimal point instead of fractions. So all that stuff we learned about with the inch is not going to apply to the metric system. And if you do start using fractions, you're definitely not doing it right. Second question, how many millimeters are there in 1 centimeter? 10. There are 10 millimeters in 1 centimeter. The easy part about the metric system is everything works off the number 10. When we are using the standard system, we are using sixteenths, 16 equal pieces between each inch, which is definitely going to be much more confusing. So we'll stick with the number 10, which is much easier to use in the metric system. First off, when we look at our metric ruler, it looks very, very similar to our standard ruler. When we look at that, it's broken up into two parts. Each line on the ruler is considered a millimeter. So every one of those lines you see could be considered a millimeter. Every group of 10 is considered a centimeter. So when we look at that, we could have 1 centimeter or 10 millimeters, and those both mean the same thing. So the first thing we want to do here is we want to know what this point is or what this measurement is pointing to. If we just start off in millimeters and we look at our ruler, we would count each of those lines in millimeters. So if we were to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, the arrow is pointing to 12 millimeters. Or 1.2 centimeters. When we start to look at the metric system, we use our decimal place. The decimal place is kind of in its neutral position when it's in the 1 spot. If it's in the 1 spot, it would be written 12 with the label millimeters. If we're going to change the label to centimeters, which you can see, centimeters, we move the decimal place to the 10 spot. So we move it 1 over to the left. So 12 millimeters is the same as 1.2 centimeters. Millimeters, once again, we're counting by ones. Centimeters, we're counting by tens, so we move the decimal to the 10 spot. We just turn millimeters into centimeters, move the decimal place 1 spot to the left. Now we look at this. Where's this point measuring to? Well, this time, let's start with centimeters. If we start with centimeters, you'll see we have 1, 2 groups of centimeters, and then we have the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines. So in the case of centimeters, we would have 2.7 centimeters, 2 groups of 10, decimal point, 7 more centimeters, which is the same as 27 millimeters. When we count by millimeters, we are counting by ones. So with this, we're going to turn centimeters to millimeters, we would move the decimal place 1 spot to the right. We just have to keep track of what measurement we're going by. Tens with centimeters or ones with millimeters. Remember, centimeters, we put the decimal point in the 10 spot, which comes 1 spot over from, or moves 1 spot over to the left. If we want millimeters, the decimal point stays in the 1 spot, which is our neutral spot when we start to look at our decimal points. All right, let's try this one out. We'll do this first in millimeters. If you do take the time, write it down on a sheet of paper. If you have to pause, that's fine. We'll give you a second. What did you guys get for this? How many millimeters is this? This is 5 millimeters. We just count up the 5 lines. We put millimeters after it. Our decimal point is in the 1 spot. Now let's write the same measurement in centimeters. Remember, we're moving the decimal spot to the 10 spot. Did you get 0.5 centimeters? If you did, you got the correct answer. Now let's try the next one. What's this measurement in centimeters? Start in centimeters this time. Remember, centimeters, we're counting by tens. I'll give you a second. Did you get 4.3 centimeters? If you did, you got the answer right. Now, we want the answer in millimeters. How would we write this in millimeters? Remember, in millimeters, we're counting by ones. Did you get 43 millimeters? If you did, you're on the right track, going in the right direction. All right, let's try one more measurement. And for some reason, people have a tough time with this sometimes. Let's start off in centimeters. How many centimeters is this pointing to? Remember, in centimeters, we're counting by tens. Did you get 3.0 centimeters? If you did, good job. Now, this, I think, is the part that confuses people sometimes. Let's turn this in to millimeters. How would we write this in millimeters? All right, did you get 30 millimeters? If so, good job. Remember, the decimal point moved back to the 1 spot. So there we have it. When we measure using the metric system, we have to make sure we're always putting the label. We have to make sure that label's there. With that, when we have the label, we also have to make sure our decimal point's in the correct spot. With centimeters, it should be in the 10 spot, 1 over from our neutral position of 1 spot. For millimeters, the decimal point's going to stay in the 1 spot, and then we'd be counting each line as an individual object. Now, hopefully this made sense. There is a measuring worksheet that goes along with this. You need to do that. Make sure it's in Google Classroom. Make sure that you turn it in through Google Classroom when you have it complete. I'll get it back to you so you can see how you did. Thanks. Have a great day.